Welcome back, everyone, and welcome to the second session on new geographies. We're focusing still on our three macro-regional strategies or areas, respectively in the Alpine region, the Atlantic region, and the Carpathian region. We now have the pleasure of welcoming stakeholders from these three areas, which I will introduce to you in just a second. And we will then discuss with them governance and cooperation solutions for these areas. We'll look at good practices. We'll look at evidence needs, which we already discussed this morning. So I hope we can get back to the reflections on how to produce evidence that effectively can inform their policy processes. And we will be looking at future actions that can help improve and enhance territorial cooperation, governance arrangement, help build more resilient areas, reflecting around these multi-level governance arrangements that can be developed around the notion of new geographies, of functional areas, building on the notion of polycentric governance, which was addressed this morning. So we'll get back to all the notions now with a different perspectives from really the stakeholders. As previously, we have a Slido. You will see it appearing on the screen right now. And you can then, as I said earlier today, use it either by just focusing your smartphone on this QR code or going into the slido.com website and just type ESPON after the hashtag, and you will be able then to submit your questions or comments. So please use it actively. You're also free to vote on any questions or comments that are raised to emphasize that you think that they are particularly relevant. As I mentioned, we are joined by three stakeholders, and I now have the pleasure of introducing them. We have Justyna Rog, who is Deputy Director at the Marshal's Office of Podkarpackie region in Poland, with responsibility for international cooperation. Welcome to you. For the last 6 years, you have been running the Secretariat for the Carpathian Interregional Group at the European Committee of the Regions. You are a linguist by education and passion, and I also learned from your bio that you are a supervisor of the European Volleyball Confederation at the European Cup matches. So welcome.
Thank you very much.
We're also joined by Elise Vatrelot. Welcome to you.
Thank you.
You are Executive Secretary of the CPMR Atlantic Commission since 2020. You also lead the key network of 13 Atlantic region as such, and you work to advance regional cooperation on maritime policy, climate, energy, and innovation. You have a big background in EU affairs, public policy, and regional advocacy. You bring both deep expertise and passion on strengthening voice of European regions, and we are very pleased to have you with us today. Finally, Thomas Miklavčić. Did I pronounce that right?
That's right.
Right. You are a leading expert on spatial development in Slovenia, and you're based in the Slovenian Ministry of Natural Resources and Spatial Planning. You've helped shape national strategies like Slovenia's Spatial Development Strategy 2050 and the National Housing Programme. You've also been deeply engaged in European cooperation through ESPON, URBACT, the Alpine Convention, and you recently led the working group within the Alpine Convention to prepare the 10th State of the Alps report, focusing on quality of life in the Alps, and we're very glad to have you with us today.
Thank you very much.
I will start with you on the Alpine region and your reflections now. We had a presentation earlier today by Professor Tobias Chiller with results from the Interalp project. What I'd like to learn more about now from a stakeholder perspective, what was the catalyst for a research project on this? How as a stakeholder, why did you feel the need to initiate a project on interface areas around the Alps? And how do you think results from this project will be used in the spatial planning community of the Alpine region now and in the years to come? Thomas, please, the floor is yours.
Thank you very much, Eric. Thank you for introducing me and also for inviting me here today. I was one of the, I was a member of stakeholder group. There was part of this research on the Interalp territories. The need for such research actually came out of the a long-lasting collaboration between different stakeholders in the Alps in different frameworks. You have mentioned the Alpine Convention. There's also the EUSALP and the Alpine Space Programs and so on. There's a lot of cooperation going on. And then there's also, we have this effort to prepare what we call a common spatial development perspectives of the Alps. So to have a kind of a common document with a vision, with some objectives for the future development that we actually want to bring in front. And to make such a document, basically, you need to understand very well, how the territory functions, what are the interlinkages of the territory, what are actually its characteristics, and what you also need to understand better. It's to understand better this very complex governance structure that actually is in the Alps. But I'm sure not only in the Alps, also in the other parts of Europe. Basically, we have all those overlapping structures, programs, initiatives, and so on. So actually, there are eight countries altogether. There are 8 countries altogether in the Alps, which are politically organized in a very different way. There is big federal states. There are smaller, more centralistic states like Slovenia. There are also some of the countries are a part of the EU. Some are not. It also adds to the complexity of the structure. There's also many of these programs that are actually working in the Alps, and there are also international treaties that are present in the Alps. And one of these, and I have to mention it, of course, is the Alpine Convention, as being the key international contract addressing the protection of the Alps. And with its protocols, actually, it's balancing the protection of the Alps and its development, and it also stipulates the need to support the economic base of the residents in the Alps, to support the foundations of the living conditions of the Alpine inhabitants in a sustainable way. And then, as I said, these numerous cross-border international cooperation structures also at the end brought us to the point where in 2015 the European Council has endorsed the EU strategy for the Alpine region as one of the European macro-regional strategies. Another important player I want to mention here, because it's also important in the sense of providing the evidence, providing funding for different projects, is the Interreg Alpine Space program that also is a very important, let's say, actor in this multilateral settings that we have in the Alps. And then, of course, there are regions, and there are also municipalities that, in particular in spatial planning, have a lot of say and have a lot of competence. So basically, the Alps are very diverse. But also in the more the geographical sense of view, the Alps are also very diverse. They're not only the biodiversity hotspot of Europe and water tower of Europe and so on, but they're also very diverse when it comes to the sense of demographic development. The trends are very different in different parts of the Alps, and we're not always sure why this is so. Also, economic development, it's different. Then the traffic situation might be different, and so on. And to understand all this, of course, we need to have the territorial evidence. And for this reason, actually, we are applying also as a stakeholders who are meeting together in different frames. We are applying for this kind of projects. But as I said, the final goal is to develop these common perspectives for the common perspectives for the Alps. There were quite some studies done already. This one is not the first one. It's not the last one. But there were very few who actually were started and who were actually done with this aim of supporting the preparation of these perspectives. One that I have to mention is also the ESPON project from the previous program, Alps 2050. That project also brought in, it proposed some scenarios for the future development of the Alps. Another important study that actually was done, or it's actually the report on the Alpine towns. This is the 9th report on the state of the Alps that was prepared under the Swiss presidency of the Alpine Convention, and that report very much brought into forward the importance of these small Alpine towns. I think that Tobias in the morning has said something about that, how these small towns would be having 5,000-10,000 inhabitants are important actually for the wider, especially in the core Alpine area, for the provision of the services and so on. And it's an important outcome of that report. There also were some studies were actually prepared as to pave the way towards these perspectives. And in the last report, I also have to mention the 10th report on the state of the Alps on the quality of life. I also hope that's going to be one of the major inputs for these perspectives, as it actually highlights what shapes the life of the Alpine residents, what is also important for them, what they are lacking, what they would need in order to maintain the quality of life that basically has been achieved. These reports on the state of the Alps are presented every 2 years in the frame of the Alpine Convention. And also this 10th report was partly supported by ESPON. Some studies were done by ESPON, and also methodology that we have used was prepared by ESPON. ESPON seems to be a very important player, a very important tool for us, the stakeholders, to gather this territorial information. Actually, it's quite convenient for us, and in particular, these targeted activities are very convenient because it actually allows us to address a very specific issue in a very efficient manner, and that both administratively and also in the content-wise, and the results are usually very high quality, and basically also because of our active collaboration in the process of preparing the study, we are really able to get out what we need or what we believe that actually we need. In this particular case of the Alpine interlinked territories, we as policymakers and also as planners, we wanted or we need to understand these interlinkages and flows between the core, more mountainous Alpine areas and the lowlands, so the peri-Alpine areas. These territories also serve as a cross-Alpine corridors that on one hand brings a lot of economical opportunities to the Alps, but on the other also causes all sorts of problems, like environmental problems, like noise pollution, land take, and so on. So there's some problems always adjoined with some economical opportunities. Yeah, and among these core areas and among these the more flat, the peri-Alpine areas, there are very strong flows of people. There are very strong flows of good, and there is also a dependence on each other. There also these flows are not one way only. They're also not only from the core to the edge of the Alps, but also in the other way. The Alps are very important. Sometimes say the playground, for the residents of the more urbanized areas around. They're very important in the sense of providing all sorts of ecosystem services. The Alps are the water pillar of Europe. They also are important in the sense of the tourism and the recreational opportunities and so on. And we wanted to understand this a bit more in this very specific, let's say, the functional geography of interlinked territories. And we have asked quite some questions actually to the experts. So we wanted to understand better the role of the green and blue infrastructure. We wanted to understand better, how the energy production, storage, and transport are organized, and how they impact the territory. Then I mentioned before the transport infrastructure is very important and brings all sorts of opportunities, but also brings all sorts of problems and to the residents. And of course, there are these demographic interlinkages between the two areas. There are different in and out migration flows that again are not only one way. We have also a lot of secondary homes and that are in the Alps, and people moving from the urbanized areas to the core Alpine area. So there are all sorts of different flows that we need to tackle and we need to understand. And what I also would like maybe to highlight is that this research project actually collected all sorts of information that are, of course, of a very big value for us. But to go to the usability of the results, what I think it's also important that they had zoomed into this, what we call the pilot areas, of the concrete interlinked territories, or interface territories. So making these results more useful also on the regional and even on the local level. ESPON many research projects, of course, bring a lot of knowledge, a lot of good information, but they're more this kind of strategic level. And it's very hard then to translate them or to zoom them into the concrete territories. But this project did that, and I think that's another added value of this. And now I came to your question on the how the results are going to be used. I'm very convinced that we are going to make a good and a great use of this interalp results in the planning communities on a very different level. On the pan-alpine level, of course, this is the important input for this interalp project. That was also the main motivation why actually we have asked this for this project. Well, the process of preparing the perspectives is actually stemmed by the Alpine Convention. There is a working group on the spatial planning and sustainable development that is running this very important process, also involving other stakeholders in. And I think in 3 or 4 years we are supposed to come to the point in history and just say now we have common perspectives for the Alps, so a document that will bring bring the vision for this alpine development, but also some recommendations, for the lower levels of especially in planning for regions, for national states, for the municipalities, what to do in order to follow kind of a common vision of the Alps. I have mentioned before this pilot areas, and now I would like also to show just a few maps that I have actually prepared. It's our Slovenian case. Do I have the PowerPoint? I have prepared 3. Yeah, no, I go one slide back. Well, yeah, in Slovenia at the moment we are in the process of preparing the 4th generation of regional spatial plans. So until now we only have a spatial planning on the national level, and this map that actually you have seen now on the screen, these are the images from the national spatial planning strategy. The one on your left actually shows our territorial development concept. And then beside this national level, we also have the municipal level that is actually more concrete and it's more about the land use planning and so on. But we were missing this intermediate level that now we are trying to introduce. And as you can see on this map on the left side, there basically there are this kind of orange parts that are marked there. These are what we call the wider urban areas. So these actually are functional urban areas, so they're also known in the European practice. And the one in the very center, the biggest spot in the center is Ljubljana, the capital city, and then this yellow spot that goes towards the left up corner of this map actually is this interlinked territory that is also that is also studied into the Interalp report. So it's the area of Ljubljana and the Julian Alps. In our national spatial strategy, we somehow recognize that there are 2 overlapping functional urban areas. One of the capital city, and there is one smaller of the city of Kranj that is the smaller dot that also is in there. And in our regional plans, this area is going to be addressed or planned in 2 different plans, because we don't have a common region that would prepare one plan, but actually there are 2 statistical regions. So in this perspective on the national level, we're going to cut it in 2. And here I think it's important to have this interalp study, because it really shows that how these areas do interlink. And what I would like to do, and we also have another ESPON event in Slovenia in September on that, we'd really like to introduce these ESPON results to the stakeholders, to those who actually are preparing the plan, who are working on it, who are drafting it, to try really to overcome this administrative burden that actually we have in our planning system. This map also here shows this governance, let's say, landscape of the area with all different national authorities and also cross-border and so on. And just to finish with, There are also there are two maps that also illustrates what I said before. The one on the right actually is from the Interalp project, so it's this Julinev's Ljubljana area, and the one on the left. That those of you who might have a sharp eye will see are missing the capital city, missing the lower part of the map. It's from one of our national study that we have actually done to prepare this regional plan. This picture on the left shows actually the urban we call it urban model of the area. And if you look at the bottom of that picture, you see there are no interlinkages to the capital city, but that actually are there. And here basically this ESPON study somehow is, in our case, interregional study that really shows us the importance of also having a look on a different type of geography. We call it a new geography, but it's, let's say, a functional geography of the area. Yeah.
Excellent, thank you very much. I think your presentation very nicely illustrates how the ESPON program can answer specific knowledge needs. You talked about now new geographies, you talked about specific questions on green infrastructure, on energy storage, on transport, concrete needs that someone has to be in front to provide this type of evidence to create the conditions for an evidence-informed discussion, especially in a context where we know that many political developments go in direction of less evidence-informed and more ideology or types of approaches which can be very, well, the dialogue can be complex, and the importance of preserving a trust, of having a basis, evidence base for discussion is increasingly important, so making that robust. You mentioned, you want to comment, please.
Yeah, I want not to comment, but I think for me it's important that we have a process. And so when in a process you came to a certain question, it's very good if you have someone you can ask to.
Okay.
And in this respect, these studies are really, as I said, very, very convenient for us, because we can ask very specific question, and quite quickly we can actually get the answer to it, and then we can use this evidence. And then, of course, in policy making, on one hand, it's important to have evidence. Here, I think we are all convinced that the policy making has to be evidence-based and so on. But it's also true that more evidence you have, more knowledge you have, harder you make a decision. So it's like, that's why I think it's important to have a process. And also, if you have then stakeholders on board with you, we learn and we grow together. And then it's sometimes then changes do happen in the process itself. Maybe not even that important to have at the end a paper whatsoever, but it's important that you have the right stakeholders on board all the time.
Excellent. It's nice. We talked about this morning more maybe as something to be addressed, but you say it's actually functioning. You have a process. ESPON has been able to answer, to provide elements resulting from that process. I'll be then very interested to hear from the Alpine and from the Atlantic and Carpathian regions if you feel you have the same processes. Maybe there is a room for sharing of good practices there. But it's very nice to say that from your perspective, things are already functioning. There are things in place. And ESPON is a component of the answer to that issue. So that's very nice. I also liked the way you mentioned the example of the small towns and their importance. And I imagine having this as an Alpine project creates a legitimacy and say, these towns are important. It's not just a small Slovenian issue, it's not an Austrian issue, it's an Alpine issue. And not only does that create legitimacy for the local actors to say, we are important, we are 5,000 inhabitants, but you need to focus on our needs. But also to tell the European Commission or the European bodies, these small towns, you need to make sure that these policies preserve these towns, otherwise we have an issue. And we say that not as I said, one Slovenian or one Austrian town, we say it as the Alps, and that creates another weight.
That's a very important result. I was very glad that we actually got that result, and again we got that information. You said I'm working a lot with the spatial planning on the national level, like very strategically. And we all the time we are hearing that Slovenia is a very centralized country, that everything is in the capital city, everything is moving there, jobs are there, and so on, and functions are there. And we're all the time arguing, of course, there's this process going on. But if you want to, let's say, to moderate this process, not to stop it, but maybe to moderate it, we have to give a lot of support to these small towns, that they have that their role actually is to provide services also for the countryside. So But quite often we hear that now if we want to keep the countryside to the rural areas populated, to invest sort of into rural areas. Of course, we have to invest there to a certain extent, but these small urban nodes are even of greatest importance, because if you lose those small urban nodes, people just move to the bigger city. They just have to jump over, one territorial structure. I think the results of this project are quite important. As you said, also, yeah, as a message towards the EU, towards the cohesion policy, how it should be designed, what it should support, and so on. But it's also a great argument for us on the national level. When you're actually talking to either to planners or to politicians or to other policymakers and so on.
Excellent. So we have a concrete example of a macro-regional added value in planning processes and its different implications. Thank you very much for that. It's time to move on. I'd like to hear more from the Atlantic region. So I move on to our speaker, Elise Vatrelot. I'd like to hear more about why. Why do decision makers in the Atlantic area promote the idea of a macro-regional strategy? What do they expect from it? Is it maybe something similar from the Alpine? Is it different from the Alpine region? And how is this related to new geographies? We talked in more the new geographies, the development, the responses to emerging trends, this notion of non-standard functional areas, new ways of thinking interrelations. What role does that play in these processes? And once again, if you can get back to what evidence do you need? So do you have the same very positive impressions as was presented to us just now for the Alpine, or do you see really a need to establish something, establish processes, and establish a dialogue with applied research organizations such as ESPON? Elise, please, the floor is yours.
Thank you very much, Eric, and thank you to ESPON for this very nice event, and also to hear from other geographies. It's very interesting also in our case in the Atlantic. So perhaps to answer your question, let me bring you back to 1989. I know it sounds a little bit strange, but I do think it's interesting to see the political process behind, and that brings us back actually to 1989, when the Atlantic Arc Commission of the CPMR was created. So basically 23 regions came together. Thank you very much. Came together to create the Atlantic Arc Commission. It was done out of political will, especially from the president of regions Pays de la Loire and Brittany. And they had the feeling that it would be better for the Atlantic regions to come together in view of EU integration, of course, but also because they had a sense, they had the knowledge that, of course, the economic growth was more at the center of Europe, the blue banana to which Alexander earlier referred to. And so they decided to create this association to counter a little bit this peripherality that the Atlantic Arc was knowing back at the time. And so it's important to see that there was a political will also initiating this joint association in the Atlantic Arc. What is interesting also is that they had a feeling of a common heritage, although it's diverse in the Atlantic. They felt that they had an history in common that was backing a little bit this idea of joining forces to develop the Atlantic Arc. Of course, it is, well, the Celtic legacy, the migration routes to America, the trades in the Atlantic, the maritime prosperity of the 15th, 18th century. And this is important to quote. It sounds a little bit anecdotic, but it's very important to explain a little bit the trust that has been built also between those Atlantic regions and how it was supported by a political narrative. And back at the time, actually, the politicians, they had a project, they had a funding objectives that can be summarized as such. So first, creating solidarities between Atlantic regions, developing transport, communication infrastructure around the Atlantic Arc, supporting regional development. Also, a very interesting objective that I rediscovered is the developing flagship industrial projects. I think it's very much echoing the current discussion we have at EU level. building up networks of Atlantic research and academic institutions, promoting touristic assets, and developing environmental protection and measures for an attractive living environment. So this was a little bit the initiating an integrated vision of the development in the Atlantic Arc Commission, and this was followed actually by many other, creation of many other associations in the Atlantic cities, Atlantic Economic and Social Committees, more recently Atlantic Chambers of Commerce. We had also new European framework to develop such cooperation, Interreg Atlantic area, and also the Atlantic Maritime Strategy, that is this intergovernmental strategy between the four EU Atlantic member states. So it brought really much a lot of cooperation framework and solidarities actually at an Atlantic scale. On the two maps that you can see on the screen, it's our map, our association, so the map in 2024. So it's our member regions, and on the side is the Interreg Atlantic area and the regions that it encompasses. And I thought it's good because sometimes, good to show you that, because sometimes we don't necessarily understand or think what is the Atlantic area. It's a very vast geography. And so to answer your question also on what now is relevant for us and why we've applied to this ESPON analysis is that we thought that, of course, we have remaining challenges in the Atlantic Arc Commission that our regions and our regional politicians feel we need to, still work on it. And we have also a new context, and that's a little bit different from 1989. The new context is, of course, the withdrawal of the UK from the EU, the double impact we had with COVID-19 crisis on the Atlantic regions. We have also, a shift in global alliances that is also affecting local resilience. And all in all, there was a feeling, and actually a couple of years ago, to have a rebirth of this integrated vision of Atlantic development. How to go a little bit further than what exists, and how to really coordinate efforts in that respect. So I can share, I think it's this button. Sorry if I'm not using it properly. Okay, thank you very much. So now there is also the green transition. This is very, very important challenge, and that's creating, of course, new solidarities, new challenges to tackle together. Just wanted to show you this first map on the left-hand side. It's the hydrogen station in Europe. You can see they are very much focused in the center of Europe. And so back at the time, regional politicians thought, well, this is not normal. This is also preventing the Atlantic from new opportunities linked to the green transition. So we have to do something together, actually, to counter this reality. And of course, hydrogen, as you know, so that it is economically viable, you have to produce a lot of hydrogen. You have to multiply the uses. So their cooperation is an interesting thing to do in the Atlantic, also because we have specificities, maritime industries that can use green hydrogen for their own functioning. So that's a little bit where we can see that the former objective can be translating into current realities. We also have, and probably Alexander also mentioned that to you this morning, but very uneven socioeconomic developments in the Atlantic. So we have different driving regions, but also less developed regions in the Atlantic. And there was a feeling that joining forces in the Atlantic could sort this out and try to create value chains also across the Atlantic that share many commonalities in terms of sectors, industries, and specializations. Oops, I'm gonna pass the slide. Thank you. also the connections, that's something we discussed back in 1989. There was a sensation that the Atlantic came together because of a certain peripherality. So the Atlantic transport connection is still something, a challenge for us. They are, of course, more connected regions now, but it needs to still be improved to support attractivity and economic development in the Atlantic. As you can see, mostly the Atlantic corridor is connecting the capitals. It has improved throughout time to connect the metropoles in the coastal areas, but still there are some work to do in that respect. And so the ESPON analysis is also a very nice exercise to actually go further than just the European maps on Atlantic corridors, but also give a sense of connectivity in the Atlantic area and how joint efforts could solve that. And let me also go back to existing framework. They have built trust through time, which is very important. But the regional politicians, they might have felt a lack of integration between those different frameworks. Although it's done in the current on the day-to-day basis, there are interactions between those frameworks, between the Atlantic Maritime Strategy and Interreg, and also and also with us, the Atlantic Arc Commission. But still, there is a sensation that we could go a little bit further in the level of integration to have an integrated vision of the Atlantic territory. So that's a little bit where we come from with the ESPON analysis. And what is also interesting with this exercise is that it brought not only the Atlantic regions together on a specific study, but also other economic and social stakeholders in the Atlantic, because we associated with Atlantic cities, in the steering committee of this ESPON analysis, with the Atlantic Economic and Social Committees, with regions that are participating directly also in the steering committee. So it's very much of a bottom-up approach also. So the idea was also to come together with this analysis, and so it has helped us a lot actually to, as you said, Thomas, grow together in having a shared vision of what is the Atlantic development.
Excellent, thank you very much. We see then emerging, then you have processes emerging then in this process in interaction with the ESPON project actually of what is the evidence need, how can it be responded? Do you feel then that you're starting to has it changed the way the dialogue is running? Does this evidence, do you see the needs for more? What is the state currently? Well, what is the state of mind? You've now a starting point to actually establish something operational, or you already have something that you feel is bringing you into a more operational, coming up with solutions basically to your challenges? What's the state of play?
No, definitely. We have, so there is two levels. There is a political, let's say, political work. It has helped us a lot to discuss the topic all together, to share the same vision. It has helped us also in the way we interact with the member states and also the European Commission, because it brings data and really formal data to specific challenges of the Atlantic. So in that way, it has helped us, and it has helped us also very concretely in the sense that regions they have started to talk together about. So then, what we need to do. If the macro region exists or not, what are the concrete steps we can take all together to answer the specific challenges that were identified in the ESPON analysis. And for example, we have currently a reflection on how to align funding at different levels. So regions, they are starting to understand what kind of mechanism could work to perhaps align funding on flagship projects that they would share together. They would feel that it's relevant for them and for the other. That's an example of a concrete step that we are doing. whether the macro region in the end is officialized at EU level. There is a level of integration that can be done already by the stakeholders.
Thank you. That's another interesting perspective on how you build critical mass. So basically, the Alpine level gives a critical mass for reflections on alignment, and then maybe methodological approaches that would be applied in individual area and gain legitimacy from being the product of a transnational reflection. Thank you. We will have a final round of discussion, so I hope questions are now coming into the Slido, and we will be getting back to those at the end, so we can go back to each of the regions, depending on the questions that arise from the audience. But for the time being, we move back to the other side of Europe, to the Carpathian. Justina, if you could also introduce us to the justification of, I have a bit of the same questions as for the Atlantic. What is driving this idea of macro-regional strategy? How is it related to functional areas, and what evidence do you need? So could you please share your reflections on these topics also from the Carpathian perspective? Justina, please.
Well, first of all, thank you for having me. Thank you for organizing this excellent event. When I saw the title of the conference, of the event, I thought that I am maybe in the right place because I'm going to speak about something new. Maybe not completely new because initiative has a long story, but we don't have legal frames for Carpathian strategy. So Carpathian strategy, Carpathian Mountains are the second largest mountain range in Europe, of course after the Alps, and covering 190,000 square kilometers. The diversity of management systems and traditions is evident in this area because it covers European states, from European regions from Poland, from Slovakia, Czech Republic, Romania, and Hungary, as well as non-European regions as Moldova, Serbia, and Ukraine. So it seems like regions are under the jurisdiction of many countries. And this area is a home for 57 million people due to, in large scale, to the location of big centers in the foot of the mountains, as for example, Budapest, Bucharest, and Bratislava. However, it should be noted that it is a home for a wide population. And we are also facing a big problem of ongoing depopulation process because people are leaving remote areas, especially young people, and we need to find some solution, find some way how to convince them to stay. Another problem is that Carpathian countries show significant differences in economic development as measured by GDP per capita. The main dimension of these differences is the west-east axis, followed by the north-south axis. The low level of development in the macro region was particularly evident in relation to European average. The level of development in some region measured by purchasing power parity was less than 10%, and the large majority of the regions doesn't exceed 50%, so it's very low. When we compare it with Alps, the difference is very huge. And it is also worth noting gaps in technical and communication infrastructure, which require further support and investments. Then from social perspective, transportation is crucial to people mobility and access to basic services as education, healthcare, and culture. For example, in my region, in Podkarpackie region, in the south part of Poland, many elderly people living in small villages in mountains face big problems during the winter when they get sick and they need to call ambulance. It's sometimes it's not possible to reach them in the right time, in the right moment. And however, we cannot forget about unique nature and our duty to protect it. The Carpathian Mountains cover a wide range of habitats and are considered to be one of the key hotspots of biodiversity in the whole continent. And the region is home for many animal populations and also includes significant areas of natural forest. Some of the forests survive until now, until modern times, without human interference, which are important sites for water retention. And I think that a key element to create functional area, functional region is bottom-up activity. And bottom-up activity is evident in Carpathian region by many initiatives because local communities, local residents know best what challenges they face, what problems they have. And it's also important to have support of local authorities and to have their understanding because sometimes local authorities can disturb them because they would like to locate European funds in the centers of regions instead to put them in more rural areas. Then overcoming barriers will be possible only through joint activities, approaches, and extend beyond administrative borders to strengthen the area as a living place for a people with economically and socially sustainable initiative. The good example is existing Carpathian Convention that organize many initiatives dedicated for nature, then for environment protection, and we cannot forget about Green Deal. We need to think about going forward, about applying new initiatives, but we cannot forget about protection of the environment. In conclusion, I think that recognition of the Carpathian macro-region as a functional region with a territorial identity is essential because it will help to protect natural resources and to support local communities while taking advantage of its unique assets, right? And about the results, I think that we have to use them in the framework of existing forms of cooperation, as mentioned Carpathian Convention, because it is a good example of a multi-sectoral governance approach that allows multi-political integration under the framework. And Carpathian Convention work on thematic protocols, thematic activities, for example, protocol on the conservation and sustainable use of biological diversity and landscapes, protocol on sustainable tourism. We would like to also share analysis from the project with all stakeholders that are engaged in the process of creation of the future macro-regional strategy for the Carpathians. And I would like to emphasize that the Carpat project is a unique one. And before, we didn't have such a project that based on the data from EU countries as well as from the non-EU countries. and this is very important. Our stakeholders in ongoing ESPON projects were Maramureș County Council from Romania, Suceava County Council from Romania, and Prešov from Slovakia. And as an observer, we had Ministry for Regional Funds and Regional Development from Serbia. So they also promised to share analysis with all stakeholders in their countries. Because as you mentioned, Eric, I also work for the Interregional Carpathian Group within the European Committee of the Regions, and we are also discussing now how we can use results. And on the next Carpathian Group meeting, we will try to find a good way to share it with local communities in our countries, because, as you mentioned, evidence. This is what people ask. This is what habitants ask. What we will get, how our life quality will improve. And we also plan more bottom-up activities. Now, as we have those results, we hope to make it in the better way, to get more impact from the people. And we would like to also create more strategic documents dedicated for the future Carpathian strategy. In 2019, European Committee of the Regions adopted opinion on the macro-regional strategy for the Carpathian region. It was the first official document that mentioned Carpathian strategy. And then we had COVID. We cannot forget also about war in Ukraine. My region is bordering with Ukraine. But in this context, the future Carpathian strategy can also help in the future reconstruction of the Ukraine, because everything has to be rebuilt in Ukraine: institutions, schools, then natural resources. We need legal framework to protect it and to undertake joint initiatives to do it. And to do it, we need a common agreement of whole Carpathian member states, and then to get acceptance of the European Union. And I hope it will come soon, and I hope that governments of whole European countries will understand needs of the people living in remote areas, and our voice will be heard.
Thank you very much. I think you provide very nice illustration of how the Carpathian, very nice first to see how the Carpathian is gaining momentum. Carpathian cooperation is gaining momentum. What I'm wondering, we talked about this morning about functional areas being about supporting through evidence a policy project. And we've heard exciting projects for Carpathian. We talked about the Carpathian Natural Park, maybe a transnational nature protection driven by politically, well, by the usefulness in terms of its in political processes. Maybe it adds another legitimacy, another energy to nature protection to make it transnational. This is the ideas we might. Then what is the evidence that would be needed to support such a project? We know also that in the Carpathians you have an extensive industrial tradition, but industries, many of which are maybe struggling. They need to become more competitive, more innovative. And this is a transformation. You need to then access the skills, develop access to research environments, new functional areas, new functional geographies of industries in the Carpathian, building on natural resources with a green digital perspective. I'm just wondering, we talked about the critical mass of the macro-regional cooperation, the added value of the macro-regional level. Do you see this already in the Carpathian, a critical mass in renewing reflections on how can nature protection be organized more effectively? How can we think of industrial transitions with taking on board the specificities of the Carpathian mountain lowland context Do you see that already, the starting point for this? And then do you see how this could lead into maybe even more specific requests for follow-up evidence to inform discussions on key topics such as those?
Thank you for this question. So I'm sure that we are ready to face those problems because, as I mentioned, many young people are leaving remote areas and going to the centers, to big cities to study. And then we need to find a way to make them come back to remote areas and to prove habitants how they can face challenges and at the same time do not harm nature, because elderly people are very scared about harming nature and about losing their identity. Also in my region, we are now working on the hydrogen centers that are located also in the mountains, and with European Union help, assistance, we know how to do it without harming nature and at the same time to helping nature facing common problems, because we have pollution. We are facing every year problems with water because there's a lack of water. So we need to move forward, but we need some help and legal frames to do it, because our initiatives are, as regions, as local authorities, are good, but are not enough.
If I may, this is a great linking point to one of the questions from the audience about, you talk about getting the financial support, maybe the regulatory frameworks. Do you see in the next programming period the flexibility coming up to address? You have the processes leading to either concrete projects or very clear identification of needs. But do you then feel that you have the frameworks, EU, national, that will allow you to implement solutions that are fitted to not only the need itself, but the way the governance context around the needs? Katarzyna, maybe if you want to start, and we'll go around on this topic, which I think interests everyone.
So the frameworks, as we have for now, are not enough for the Carpathian communities, because we need some tailor-made solutions. When we speak about unique resources, about cultural heritage, we cannot close it in the framework of one region. We have development strategy, for example, for Podkarpacki region, but we cannot cover the cross-border part. There are so many challenges and so many borders that we need to take into account, and without having one framework that will work for whole macro region, we cannot fully understand and face needs of local communities. As my colleague said, this framework as macro region helps a lot. Helps a lot to integrate communities, but also from the financial point of view. So I think that Carpathian strategy, macro-regional strategy for the Carpathian, is needed.
Thank you. Elise, your reflections on frameworks and future of cohesion policy post-2027, and whether it needs to be rethought to align with what you see as needs and possibilities.
Yeah, very interesting question, very, very deep as well. There are two things. For the current programming period, I think what we've seen is that we need to align fundings to specific projects so that they have impacts also. And of course, cohesion policy is a very interesting tool because it's a place-based approach, place-based investment. So for us, cohesion policy is very dear to our heart, and at CPMO level, we are defending a cohesion policy that involves regional authorities in the strategic thinking and the implementation. That's a very important message we try to share with EU institutions. But there are also the directly managed funding that are also an important source of funding. And sometimes we've seen that they might have lacked territorial awareness, how they are spread across Europe. This morning, Alexander showed a map of Horizon project. They were concentrated on Central Europe. So I think there is also reflection to have on the territoriality of this directly managed funding that should be complementary, actually, to the investments made through cohesion policy. Now, with the negotiations that will start on a new multi-annual financial framework for the EU and reflection around the future of cohesion policy, I think this exercise made by ESPON and our exercise also to gather forces at the Atlantic level is very crucial in terms of timing. We need to have a clear view on where we are going, also to make sure that we can also influence the future funds and how they are built, so that also we can include some mechanisms to better streamline funding. So that's also very important to have that now. You talked about momentum for the Carpathian. I think it's a momentum for different geographies also in that respect. And yes, of course, so that would be my answer, like how is it now, and the influence we can have on the future cohesion policy and other programs. We have seen the discussion around national plans as well as a way to structure the investment at EU level. This is something we are a little bit worried about in terms of awareness of the territorial challenge. But I mean, we are here also to think through on what would be the best solution for territories.
Thank you. Thomas, do you have also reflections on the needs for possible more flexibility in cohesion policy, or do you think current frameworks can actually offer the sufficient solutions?
I don't really know if I have the right answer to that. Maybe to these frameworks, there are so many, and each of them actually adds a little bit of complexity to the entire picture. So I think also it's very hard for those who are actually doing programming and so on. It's basically very hard to address all that, because quite often, although we have the similar objectives, the details are a bit different, and that's why I think so often we are discussing that these policies maybe they're territorially blind and so on. But it's also because there are so many different objectives and frameworks, and sometimes that's where maybe I see this added value of this alpine perspectives. As having a kind of a joint document, basically it might also be cross-sector and try to guide a little bit more, everyone who is basically doing something in the area, from those who are actually programming the cohesion policy, or from the national authorities and so on.
Okay, so if I understand you correctly, a big part of the solution is also just informing all actors involved and getting them a bit in the same direction, pulling in the same direction more, and then they may be able to use tools in a more effective way. I
said before, for me, this process is very important. I think that basically we'll never be completely satisfied with the result, and we always say that we're not following all the priorities that we have. We are not, place-based enough. I think we'll never get there, because if the one thing is true is that actually the territory is developing all the time. So also the objectives are changing all the time. So it's very hard to be at the right time, really, very concise and have the right instrument there.
Thank you. I'd like to close with we have one interesting question from the audience on identity and public mobilization, keeping the people in mind in this, this could not be a technical business project. It's about people living in their regions and feeling that they belong to an area, and that this is part also of their aspirations for the future, that they belong and they would like to see their home areas developing in a balanced, resilient way, etc. What roles do you say in that? Do you have any comments on this notion of keeping the people in the macro region and then seeing what is the added value of a macro regional, huge, extensive territories, and also ensuring that the living environment of individuals are being preserved and developed. I don't know if you have any concluding reflection on that, keeping the people in the loop in these and the identities. Is it already the case? Is that what it's driving this? That people are already feeling very Carpathian or Atlantic or Alpine, or is it something else?
I strongly believe in public identity and mobilization because when we stop to believe in our roots, in our identities, there is no sense to move forward, to protect it. And it's beautiful that people still live in these remote areas, still protect their identity, their culture, sometimes the language, because we have many kind of different languages in Carpathians. It depends on the regions. And about public mobilizations, after 30 years of public initiatives, bottom-up activities in Carpathians, we still believe that there will arrive the right moment that European Union will hear our voice and will create macro-regional strategy for the Carpathians. We used to say that Alpine strategy is our older sister because the specificity is similar, because Alpine strategy is created for the mountain areas. And we are hoping and waiting for our momentum.
Great, thank you. I think those will be the concluding words today. I think we have three regions that all have this sense of being marginal, peripheral in some respects, at least inner Alps, having some kind of specific challenges. New geographies, functional areas are also a topic for metropolitan areas, for the most central ones. This is also then maybe an opening to a follow-up discussion to address this across Europe, and this is not a specific. We need to go from a discourse of specificity to a project for Europe that includes everyone, and that is broad enough, varied enough, allowing for the flexibility to actually adapt to a wide range of realities, of political projects, of aspirations, and bringing this into a coherent whole. But I think those will be the concluding words for today. Thank you very much for your inputs. Very enriching to see also your perspective, adding on to what we heard this morning from the researchers. Very nice to see how you've drawn benefits from what ESPON has produced, and see how that's concretely being then incorporated into the policy processes, and very much looking forward to seeing how this develops in the months and years to come. Thank you very much. Thank you very much to the audience. Thank you for the questions. Very nice to have you with us. And I hope this was also an enriching and interesting experience for you. Thank you.